The lathe tool within subdivision editing now. As before, we've got our basic melted cube. We'll select a face on the cube and then select the lathe tool, which is found in the subdivision context-sensitive flyout. A single click will expose the proposed default lathe path, set at 270 degrees and with 16 segments. You can see this clearly by right-clicking on the lathe tool. We open up a small dialog box here, 16 segments, 270 degrees of angle, and with a radius of 2, that's 2 meters, our chosen units here. Also, the grid units is, of course, standard. Now we can manually control the rotation of the lathe path by holding on to the light blue handle here and clicking and dragging the mouse. Or, of course, we can use manual entry. Simply put rotation at 90 and we've got a rotation of 90. Set that back to 0. Radius, we can use the spinners here to control that quite easily. Or we can use numerical entry for a radius of 1. I'll set the angle to 180 and I'll put the radius back at 2. Because we're working in subdivision surfaces, 16 divisions may be a bit too many here, since we're going to end up with a very dense mesh. So we'll set segments to 8, half the default. Now to actually sweep this face, or lathe the face along that path, just simply click again on the lathe icon, and there you have it. We've lathed that path. We can go in now while the lathe is still active and select any of the newly created segments. Then we can scale those. And as we scale it, we're actually getting more feedback. It's actually scaling other segments around it, which actually can create some quite interesting shapes. Again, we can move the segments any way we want, and we're not just moving the segment, but the whole of the active mesh. Once again, we'll select one of the segments and we can move that. We're getting this in full real-time display, and with our subdivided mesh, of course. As soon as we press the space bar, we've locked the lathe tool, and now we can't go back and edit each of the segments. We'll just create a new object here by pulling up a new cube again. Going back into the control mesh state, we're going to have a look at the helix option within the lathe tool. Once again, select lathe tool and right-click on it, this time with the helix option here. Now if we just pull the spinner, you can immediately see that we're adding a twist to the path here. By changing the rotation, we can move it around, of course. And now if we start to move the angle, we can actually create a spiral or helix. Add some more segments, and we can see that it's smoothing out here nicely. Keep winding, and we're winding down a helix. Now if I left-click the lathe icon again, I'm going to sweep my face into that helix shape. You can get some very interesting objects that way. And of course, we've still got total control of the mesh. You can actually reduce and scale parts of it for a more abstract feeling to it. You can get some very interesting shapes out of the lathe tool.